with the U.S.-China trade war entering a new phase. Over the weekend, China's economy is also showing its own signs of slowing down. Industrial production, retail sales, and business investment in April all missed expectations. This is a slowdown that preceded the latest increase of tariffs on some Chinese exports to the U.S. by President Trump. Remember, those went into effect last Friday. Rick Newman joins us now to discuss. So, Rick, the question here, I think, when it comes to kind of like the Trump position, the Trump negotiating strategy, is there's a few schools of thought as to who actually has the leverage. And I think some folks come down on the side of, well, Xi Jinping can afford to wait because he's essentially in power forever, and Donald Trump has an election in 18 months. But it seems like the Chinese economy may put its own kind of pressure on Xi to negotiate, but is that really something that he's going to react to on a short-term basis?
That's definitely what we hear Trump saying. He basically keeps saying, look, this is hurting us more than hurting them more than it's hurting us. I think if you back away from that, you say, well, why would we hurt anybody in the first place? I mean, like, we should be trying to get the most for ourselves out of this, not hurting ourselves. But I'm just not sure it's going to work. I mean, by the way, we're not necessarily doing so great either. I mean, we got new numbers today. Retail sales disappointed. Industrial production disappointed. So by the same measure as we're discussing China's economy, we could be saying, gee, maybe the U.S. economy is slowing. And, you know, most of the economic projections for second quarter GDP, first quarter outperformed, but that may have been for anomalous reasons. And we could see a pullback in the second quarter here as well.
So we had an interesting guest, I think it was on Wi-Fi PM yesterday on our programming, an analyst from the Eurasia Group, who basically said, when you look at China's coverage, media, not just business media, of the trade war, it had been non-existent or very minimal leading up to perhaps the last week or so. And that was Xi's kind of calculus as to, no, now we're going to be showing that we are bullied. And we talked about that on the show yesterday as well.
They've also censored Trump's tweets.
Exactly.
Right?
They've censored Trump's tweets. They've basically made it as though this is suddenly coming out of nowhere and there were no negotiations in place. Do you feel like that has affected the mindset? Because to your point, anyone who's been watching China knows that it's been slowing down. This is not news to anyone. So what do you make of kind of piecing all of these things together?
And everybody's trying to read these signals. The Chinese are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to read Trump's tweets and figuring out what is he really getting at here and kind of getting it wrong. Yes, reporting from China. By the way, we should point out that China does control the media for the most part in China, so it's a different story there. But you're right, a more nationalistic tone in the Chinese media, which is sort of, I guess you might call that prepping the battlefield for what might be a longer fight. That is something that China experts have said to watch for. I mean, that will be a signal that President Xi is digging in his heels and is not going to roll over. And to my mind, what has really changed in the last couple of weeks, let's say 2 weeks, is that now that this is a public dispute rather than a matter of private negotiation, both sides, including the egotistical presidents of each country, now have to prove they're not going to give in to the other guy.
Right.
I mean, so
there's accountability.
It makes it much harder to see where is the exit ramp here. And Eurasia, you mentioned the Eurasia Group, they have a nice piece of analysis out today. They are handicapping this by saying they see about 15% likelihood of an actual deal that resolves the trade dispute. This would be when President Xi and Trump meet in Japan at the end of June. They think there's a 45%. Sorry?
If they end up meeting.
If they meet.
I mean, I think right now we're just heard it from the White House saying they're going to meet. You know, we haven't heard anything from the Chinese side.
So they're saying 15% chance of a deal. That's obviously low. 45% chance of a truce, which basically means everything just stays where it is, including these newest tariffs. And a 40% chance that this goes south and actually gets worse, which entails
there are your
more
odds
tariffs.
right
so
there.
That is not an optimistic outlook.
There's always a 50-50 chance it comes to resolution, right?
Sure, you could always look at it that way.
I mean, I saw a story today that was like, ambassador says 50-50 chance. Like, yes, thank you.
That's based on what?
Right.
You know?
Right.
I mean, that's the
Me
thing,
waking up
that,
tomorrow, 50-50
to Rick's
chance.
point, everything has been coming from the White House. We've heard what the Chinese are saying through the Chinese state media. But at the end of the day, we don't know what their exact thinking is. And if you want to read all the signals that's been out there, the Chinese are digging in their heels. Both sides seem like they think they have leverage.
The Chinese are becoming more defiant. And what we do know about China is just in terms of the way they operate, China is a proud country. There's this matter of face in China. You don't publicly embarrass people in China. It doesn't work.
Right.
So you will not get your way if you confront somebody publicly and expect them to back down. And I think that is essentially what President Trump has done.
All right, Rick Newman.